this schedule really shapes up for a playoff run with a 12-team playoff.
Areas that, you need to get from experience, which is just, hey, I need to make quicker decisions.
How do you define success for this team?
National championship.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to another edition of Summer School on the Cover 3 College Football Podcast. This is my attempt to talk as many college football teams as we possibly can in the summer. And today, it's a big one, the Clemson Tigers. I'm joined by Austin Hannon of Clemson 247. Austin, welcome back to the show, man.
Appreciate it, bud. Good to be here for the second summer in a row. Always enjoy doing this and checking them out every summer.
Absolutely. So returning to the top of the ACC, a playoff berth, giving Texas a pretty decent run there in that playoff. What's the general kind of vibe out of the Clemson program right now?
I think they're ready to take that next step again, bud. I think there's been a few years here where obviously they missed the playoff back-to-back seasons, but as you mentioned, they got back there. Whether it was, the way they drew it up or not, obviously they lose to South Carolina on the final day of the regular season, but Syracuse saves them, beats Miami, ensures Clemson gets to play for the ACC title. They get there, they win it on a walk-off field goal. Obviously, not everybody's happy about a 3-loss ACC team getting in. They did get in. Kind of got pushed around pretty well at the line of scrimmage early in that Texas game, but like you said, Klubnik kind of brought them back and gave them a little momentum boost, I think, heading into the offseason. So I would say the expectation is to reach that playoff again, to win the ACC again, as they're expected to do. I believe in the odds market still right now by a pretty heavy share of Vegas odds so far. So I think getting back there, getting to the Final Four would probably be the expectation. Anything past that, I think the fans would be happy with. But I think making the playoff and losing to an SEC team in the first round is, I don't think that would be a win based on what they have coming back.
Let's talk offense. So Garrett Riley is back yet again, and so is Cade Klubnik. Where can this thing go with the continuity and chemistry those guys have, just haven't worked together so long?
It can go a long way. I mean, I've talked about it, written about it a lot this offseason. I think we're going to see a lot of throwing the ball from this team, and for good reason. They've got a great offensive line with 4 starters coming back. All 3 of their starting receivers, Antonio Williams, Bryant Wesco, TJ Moore, all back in the fold. They did lose Jake Brenningstool. They did lose Phil Maffa. So those are 2 guys that have been important in recent years, but I don't think that they're at positions that they don't feel like they can recover. But you've got your quarterback back, and you've got an offensive line and receivers that are going to be there to help them out, and that they've already got a lot of continuity. I mean, starting tackles are back. You've got your starting center. Like I mentioned, 3 starting wide receivers are back, and that doesn't even include a guy like Tyler Brown that missed pretty much all of last season with an ankle injury after leading Clemson in receiving as a freshman 2 years ago. He's back. And then they got this guy that not a lot of people know about just yet, but a 6'5" transfer, Tristan Smith from Southeast Missouri State. He played JUCO ball before that. Almost 1,000 yards, I think, at the FCS level last year. They brought him in. He was the first portal addition this offseason, really the first portal addition ever for Dabo Swinney. And next thing you know, during spring ball, I mean, he's lighting it up. He's lighting up the spring game, caught a couple touchdowns. So that's a guy that kind of gives them a different build in that receiver room that you've seen recently. They've got a lot of slot speed receivers. This guy brings a little something different, so he's something to watch. But yeah, the whole offense, I think if they can find a stable situation at running back, which we may talk about more in a minute, but they moved a receiver, Adam Randall, who was not playing a whole lot at receiver because of what we've talked about. They moved him to running back at the end of last year, right before that Texas game. Didn't get to play too much running back in that game because of how new it was. But now a full offseason in, I think they feel pretty good about him, and they've got some guys behind him too, some younger guys that they think can get the job done along with this passing game that we're talking about.
For all of our college fantasy players out there, it sounds like this could be a running back by committee situation, the dreaded by committee. But if it's not, and it not because of injury, like if somebody forces the issue and like, hey, I'm that dude, who is the potential to be that dude?
Yeah, that dude is Gideon Davidson. I mean, it's an easy answer. He was one of the top rated running backs in the last class at 24/7 Sports from Lynchburg, Virginia. Dabo Swinney, first day. I mean, I asked him first day of spring ball. I said, initial observations. What do you think about this guy? And they said he had I think 40-something inch vertical. He's built like he's been in the program for 2 or 3 years now. He doesn't really look like a kid that just left high school. And he wears the number 9. He's got the number 9 jersey. Some of his teammates have said that he looks a little bit like a younger Travis Etienne. So I think there's a lot of excitement with Gideon Davidson, the freshman running back. But like I said, I think Adam Randall he's been in the program. He knows the system, and he gives them a little bit of a different option because we're talking about a 6'4", 220-pound wide receiver playing running back in an offense that is going to be built to throw the ball. There's some extra wrinkles in that where Randall's playing out of the backfield. What can you use him for? Garrett Riley kind of called him a knife that they can use at different types, different situations all year long. So Those will be the top two, just because, as we mentioned, Jay Haynes is still coming back from an ACL injury that he suffered at the end of the last season. But when he gets back, which they expect to be, later in fall camp, but when does full speed look like for him? Probably, I'd say, kind of getting into the season. But at that point, I think there's three options there at running back that they have a good feeling about. But Gideon Davison's that one to watch for me.
So offensive line has the chance to be the best Clemson O-line since fill in the blank.
Since maybe ever. They had some pretty good units on those championship teams, but they've never really been known for offensive line. And then Matt Luke steps in last year and everything has flipped. And it's not just the current players on the roster that bought in, but he's recruiting his butt off on the trail. He's already got a couple guys in the class currently. So, Matt Luke has had a huge impact in just over a year now on the job. Tristan Lee, left tackle, Blake Miller, right tackle. Both of them could have gone to the NFL. I think Miller's probably the bigger prospect there, but they both decided together in a post together that they were going to come back. Of course, we talked about Antonio Williams, Cade Klubnik making the same decision. Ryan Linthicum, another graduate student. He's played center last year all throughout the season. He's going to do the same this year. The spots to watch on the line is going to be guard. They've got a lot of guys. Walker Parks is a veteran that's had some injury concerns in the past, but they kind of gave him a little bit of a rest during spring ball to kind of get him ready for this year. They got Harris Sewell. They've got Colin Sadler. There are guys in that guard room that they are expecting to step up, but having 3 or 4 guys that have started in the past and guys like Lee and Miller that have thousands of snaps to their name, you just really can't quantify that kind of experience in this sport at this time.
Makes a lot of sense there. Is there a guy we have not discussed yet who, if he plays, maybe finally plays up to his potential, or perhaps reaches his potential a year or two earlier than we think he will, that it would really change the fortunes of this offense? And it's okay if there's not. Obviously, there's a lot of returning guys.
Yeah, I really like TJ Moore this year. He was a guy last year that came in as a true freshman. He was a 5-star, so there was really no doubt that he had the talent to play, but he didn't enroll early. He didn't get to campus until middle of May. And so he was already a step behind Bryant Wesco last spring, who was kind of drawing the headlines at the time. But as the season rolled along, fans were kind of like, well, this, we know about Wesco. We've known about Wesco since last spring, but this Moore guy's pretty good. And it seems like as he learned the offense, as he kind of got used to his role in the scheme, he really, really got better as the season went on. And I thought he was the best receiver in that game against Texas, which a lot of people thought was the best secondary in college football last year with the former Clemson player, Andrew Makuba. You've got some great defensive backs that they went against that afternoon. And Moore had over 100 yards, I think, in that game. So Antonio Williams is the guy, and everybody knows about him. And he could be in the NFL this year if he had chosen to go that route. But when a lot of people look at Bryant Wesco as the number 2 guy, I see it as TJ Moore for the future. And I think he's going to be, I wouldn't be that surprised. This is going to sound crazy. I wouldn't be that surprised if Moore is the leading receiver at the season's end.
Wow. That'd be a pretty big statement there. So, last year, SP Plus had this offense as, where are we at here? 16th, which, feels like kind of low, but then looking through the season, they did score 3 against Georgia, 29 against FSU, I think one of which was defensive, 24 against Virginia Tech, 24 against Pitt, and then 14 against South Carolina. I assume you feel like they have the ability to be more consistently in the high 20s, low 30s against the non-elite teams they play this year.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that was a big thing last year. Was a lot of the fans were upset that, and there's, a lot of people have excitement about this team this year, but there's still no ruling out the fact that, there was a little bit of fraudulence last year, a little bit of it. As much as you want to say, they made the playoff, they won the ACC, they did check those important boxes, but they didn't win a game against the SEC. They lost to Louisville at home in a bad performance. And you didn't even mention that one, but that was a game that they were stuck on 7 or 10 points for most of the game, and eventually put up some points late in the game, but it was just an odd football game. So I think there is a hope that there's going to be some more consistency there. And you just look at the difference between the 2023 Cade Klubnik plus Garrett Riley connection to last year and the big step that was. I think the feeling is that there's just going to be another one of those steps. Now, if there's not, and they still have some of those inconsistencies, that completely changes all outlooks of this team this year. But I don't think there's as much concern there as there was last spring when they were still trying to kind of figure out, is Cade Klubnik going to be the guy? Is he going to be able to do this at this level? I think he answered a lot of those questions, maybe not all of them, because the Georgia game was bad and the Louisville game was bad and the South Carolina game really wasn't bad, but he did have the interception at the end of the game that lost the game. So that's what you remember from the highlights. And so I think that there is a little bit of room for improvement, but I think that it should be expected that will happen and that this offense will be able to be counted on. It's going to be more about the defense and the new defensive coordinator.
I remember betting Louisville in that game against Clemson. It really wasn't an anti-Clemson thing. It was just I felt like, as a guy observing the ACC, they had played App, which had a horrendous defense, and then NC State, Stanford, Florida State, Wake Forest, Virginia. I was like, they haven't played with a team with a pulse in like almost 2 months. So like, let's just like, to me, like, Louisville was markedly different than the prior 6 opponents. I was like, it just looks inflated. So definitely they take another step up. They won't be doing that this year. Let's go ahead and take a break, and then on the flip side, talk a little Clemson Tigers defense.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
All right, guys, welcome back into the Cover 3 College Football Podcast. I'm Bud Elliott. This is Summer School. We try to talk as many college football teams as we can, and right now it's those Clemson Tigers. And we're going to talk a little defense with Austin Hannon of Clemson 247. So, Tom Allen, fresh off a playoff run with Penn State, takes over as the defensive coordinator. I guess he has some family in South Carolina and is pretty tight with Dabo. How do you expect this defense to change under Tom Allen?
I really do think there's going to be a drastic change this year. And I know that maybe that's, positive thinking of this team that I cover. But there's just seems like in spring ball, there was just such a vibe change just on the practice field, getting to witness that in person. What it was like under Wes Goodwin, what it's like out now under Tom Allen. It was just a big difference. I mean, this is a guy, Goodwin, that was very reserved, whether it was on the field, whether it was in the press room, just a quiet guy that was kind of still learning the ropes as a young coach, that he was kind of thrown into that situation by Dabo after Venables left of, hey, you're going to be our next guy. We trust you. And maybe it was a little bit too much leash, too much rope for him. And now we'll see how he does, of course, as an analyst on Venables' staff at Oklahoma. But I think that it was just too early for him. I think it was too soon of a job, of a move. And he had some success with some talented guys early on in his tenure. But last year it was just so far off from the standard. It seemed like every single week almost, beginning with the Georgia game and getting run over by Cash Jones in the fourth quarter and losing that game by 31. And then does anything really get better by the end of the year? Texas with their backup running backs run outside zone. It's just guys are just getting put on the ground, touchdown, left, right. I mean, it's just it was a bad view a lot of the time, and they had good players on that team. I mean, Barrett Carter was on that team. A lot of the guys that are going to be counted on this year, TJ Parker was on that team. I mean, there were good players on that football team, and it just wasn't the kind of performance I think that they expected week in, week out. He made the change, and I think Allen has just been an entire new, fresh breath of life in the room, and the defense as a whole. He didn't really make Sweeney didn't make really any other staff changes in terms of position coaches and stuff, but he brought in Allen. He said he's going to be the head coach of the defense, and that's exactly what it looked like on the practice field, with Allen kind of walking around the field with a microphone, very loud, very aggressive, very outgoing. But he's one of those coaches that he expects a lot, but he's going to get a lot in return. And I think that from day one, he stepped in and said, look, I'm going to know every single kid on this team like they're my own. I'm going to get to know them, because once you can do that, there's an accountability that you can count on the practice field and on the game field. And so I just think that has gone very smooth for them. I do think there's some question marks that, if everything doesn't go perfectly, there are some holes in the defense still that he's having to kind of recover from. But they've got a really good front seven. They added to it, and they got enough guys, I think, in the secondary to make it work against the pass too. So I think total defense last year, they were pushing 70. I think that has got to be in the top 30, and especially if they're talking, thinking national title, you want that to be in the top 25, top 20. So is that possible? I don't think they're a top 15 defense, but I don't see why the talent on this roster and the coaching that they have, they can't be a top 30, top 25 defense. And if the offense, like we've been talking about, is top 10, top 5 good, I mean, that's a team that's capable of making a run. So I think all indications so far on Tom Allen are very good, but he's got to prove it on the field, and no better way to do that than LSU in week 1, right?
So I think SP Plus had them like 26th in defense, or 29th in defense last year. We know about guys like Parker and Wade Woodaz and Peter Woods. Who are some of the other dudes who could, like, if they were going to make a deep playoff run, they do need to make a pretty significant defensive jump. Who are some of the other guys who, if they step up, we really got something cooking here?
Yeah, you mentioned the top two ones, Woods and Parker, the two guys from Alabama. There's been a lot of offseason chatter around those guys. Pretty much every year they've been at Clemson. They both are still at Clemson going into year 3, and they're both expecting to be first-round draft picks next April. And so I think the expectation from the staff is, hey, how about you go play like it? For Parker, last year he absolutely did that. He nearly set school records. I think he did break a couple records and has a chance to do some more this year. But Woods wasn't. He never seemed to really get into a rhythm last year. I think it started when they tried to move him out to defensive end, and he was 320 pounds. And how does that really work? It didn't really work that well. He gets hurt early in the season on a chop block, misses time, comes back, gets hurt again, and so it never really worked out. He had some good flashes, and obviously as a freshman, he was great, and he's a former 5-star, and the NFL scouts think he's a first-round pick next year, but. I think the staff wants to see a little bit more of that, that stuff on his resume kind of translate to the field. And I think you'll see that. I think there was a very big uptick in focus this offseason from Peter Woods. Obviously, he's got a new defensive coordinator that I think he enjoys being around. He brought in Jeremiah Alexander, a former high school teammate of his at Alabama, to play linebacker at Clemson this offseason too. I believe they're living together too. So there's been some offseason changes for Peter Woods. He's cut some weight. I think he told reporters a few weeks ago down to, I think he's pushing down to 300 now. So they've moved him back over to D tackle. They've got him comfortable again. I think everything is kind of pointing towards a lot better season for Peter Woods. I think what you've got in TJ Parker, but Will Helt from Purdue on the other defensive end spot, another guy that got out of the portal. I mean, this is just a new thing for Clemson. It's just one guy after another coming out of the transfer portal. But DeMonte Capehart, another guy that could stay healthy last year, the other tackle. If those those four guys I've talked about can stay healthy and stay playing the way that they think they should, there's not many better 4-man fronts in the country than that one. And behind them, I think it's really important for Sammy Brown to take that next step as a sophomore. Wade Woodaz, they're expecting a lot out of this year as he kind of looks to take over that leadership role for Barrett Carter. Avion Terrell still here. He had some issues late in the season with some flags. But for most of the season, I mean, he graded out really well on PFF, and he's another guy that NFL scouts really like. They really liked his brother, and they really like him as well. So I really like Ashton Hampton as another cornerback, big, lengthy, physical guy, sophomore that played a lot down the stretch last season, had that one-handed interception in Blacksburg that sealed the game. So they've got talent all up and down the defense. I just think that there are some holes that they're going to have to figure out, and there have been injury concerns in years past, but if they can kind of fix those things and get the most out of the guys on the roster, I think this could be a pretty good defense.
Who do you see as like the surprise guy on this defense, or do you have a personal favorite we haven't mentioned yet? Who's like, oh, like this guy's got a real potential to step up. Maybe we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah, I really like Hampton. I mentioned him. I really like Ashton Hampton as a second-year player. Was pretty under-recruited, but had a previous relationship with Mike Reed. Kind of a funny story that he's talked about with the media before was he was a little kid growing up in Tampa, Florida, and he was on a Little League football team, and they got to go to the tarmac before the Alabama-Clemson national title game. He famously says that Nick Saban and his whole team kind of ignored the kids and were all business-like. Dabo Swinney's team, of course, and his coaches all met the kids and the parents and took pictures, and that was when the relationship started between Hampton and Mike Reed, and it ended up being a good connection that lasted into college. And I think that those two guys, him and Terrell, are going to be a pretty good corner tandem. But if they can get some help on the back end, it could be a really good secondary.
So with this schedule, the opener against LSU is just absolutely huge, obviously. And then, I mean, you get a pretty good long stretch of teams that Clemson will be favored over by more than 2 touchdowns, I would have to think, until kind of mid-October when SMU comes to town, and like that could also be a pretty big spread. And then Duke, Florida State, trip at Louisville could be difficult, and then go into South Carolina. How would you define success for this Clemson team in 25?
I think it's 11 wins in the regular season. I kind of did a schedule pick thing on my site the other day, and a few of the comments on the board was, I mean, anything below 11-1 feels like a disappointment. I mean, they went 9-3 last year. That was a disappointment because they felt like they let 2 slip away with the Louisville and South Carolina games at home. Not really much you can do about the Georgia game, but the schedule kind of looks similar to last year, where you've got that marquee matchup week 1, where I mean, in this sport, people are going to make observations. They're going to have takes after the first game. They had them last year. They were not positive in terms of Clemson after that Georgia game. And so if LSU goes into Death Valley, the Clemson Death Valley this fall, and wins that game convincingly in week 1, I think there's going to be some pretty negative talk around Dabo Swinney's program, and there probably should be. I mean, that's a game I would say that they not necessarily expect to win, but you've got it on your home field. And if you think that you're a national title contender and LSU thinks that they're probably a national title contender, somebody's got to lose the game. And so there will be observations made off that game that I mean, if it's a close game and one team wins, I think both teams probably leave happy and say, we've got a pretty good team. But it's also very important for both teams to win that game because they've got schedules that, are not technically easy, especially for LSU and the SEC. So the games you were mentioning, I do think that week 3 matchup at Georgia Tech's got some intrigue. I think the Yellow Jackets could be a pretty good team this year. They've got some returning talent. You've got a trip to go Chapel Hill to see Bill Belichick. I'm not sure really what to expect from the Tar Heels this year. But yeah, SMU at home, you look through this ACC schedule and you expect them to win most of them. That's why they're favored to win the league. But yeah, that Louisville game, that's the one. I picked the regular season schedule a week ago, I think. And that Friday night game in Louisville was the one I have them losing. I just think it sets up nicely for Louisville. I think it's a big game for them. And if they want to win the conference, I think that's one of the ones they'll be pointing to that they have to win. And it comes after a pretty brutal stretch for Clemson. So the schedule's not terribly difficult. They still play in the ACC. They have that to their benefit. They made the playoff losing 3 games last year, but we're really going to find out about this team in week 1. And then you're going to find out in the last week of the season when they got to go to Williams-Brice Stadium and play South Carolina, a team that's beaten them twice in a row on their home field. So there's some big games on there. There's some ACC games that, the fans, they don't love always looking at their schedule when the weekly schedule pops up and these SEC matchups are everywhere. And they're like, oh, we got Wake Forest this week. That's so fun. So, but yeah, good team. A lot of expectations. I think 11-1 is the expectation. I'd say 10-2 is probably the floor. And I think they do have a ceiling of a 12-0 regular season, but everything's going to have to go pretty perfectly to win all those games.
Awesome. Really appreciate the time. We'll be checking out your fantastic work on Clemson 247, man. Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate it, bud.